program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by USA Today. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for the 20th day of April. Your reader today for the first hour is Tom Scanlon. As always, we start on page 1 of USA Today, and our first article is titled, Iran War. Distance to deal remains. Trump issues threats but says talks go on. With only days remaining until a fragile ceasefire expires, President Donald Trump on April 19th threatened to attack critical Iranian infrastructure if the Middle East country doesn't agree to a U.S. deal. But he said negotiators are returning to Pakistan for another round of talks. We're offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant, every single bridge in Iran, Trump said in a post on Truth Social. No more, Mr. Nice Guy. Trump also accused Iran of committing a total violation of the ceasefire for firing on ships near the Strait of Hormuz. At the end of his message, the president added, "It's time for the Iran killing machine to end." A 2-week ceasefire in the Iran war is set to expire early on April 22nd. Talks in Islamabad ended with no agreement last week, but security measures were being taken there in preparation for potential further meetings. Vice President J.D. Vance, Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner will attend the April 20th conversations in the Pakistani capital, a White House official told USA Today. So far, talks have focused on fully reopening the Strait of Hormuz, a move critical for global oil transport, and barring Iran's access to nuclear weapons. There's currently no decision by Iran to send a negotiating delegation to Pakistan as long as there is a naval blockade, Iran's Tasnim news agency reported April 19th. The outlet's closely affiliated with Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards. When U.S. and Iranian negotiators met last weekend, Washington proposed a 20-year suspension of all Iranian nuclear activity, while Iran suggested a halt of 3 to 5 years, according to people familiar with the proposal. Meanwhile, Israel and Lebanon announced a separate ceasefire last week. More than 1 million Lebanese were displaced by the Israeli invasion, which Israel said was in pursuit of Hezbollah, a powerful Shiite armed group allied with Iran that fired across the border in support of Tehran. A French soldier serving in a United Nations peacekeeping mission in Lebanon was killed, and 3 personnel from the mission were wounded, 2 of them severely, in an incident UN officials said was probably caused by Hezbollah fire. An Israeli soldier was also killed in a separate incident, the Israeli military said. Now in its 8th week, the war has created the most severe shock to global energy supplies in history, sending oil prices surging because of the de facto closure of the strait, which before the war carried 1/5 of the world's oil shipments. The average price for a gallon of regular gas on April 19th was $4.05, according to an estimate by AAA, compared with $3.16 a year ago. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright said he believed gas prices have peaked, but predicted they may stay above the $3 per gallon until next year. Gas below $3 a gallon could happen later this year. It might not happen until next year, but prices have likely peaked and they're starting to go down, he told CNN's State of the Union program on April 19th. Certainly, with the resolution of this conflict, you'll see prices go down. Trump administration officials had offered differing views on how gas prices may shift. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent last week predicted gas prices would fall to the $3 per gallon range this summer, while Trump himself has said that gas prices may remain elevated until November. All of them have said gasoline will eventually get cheaper once the Iran war ends. Under $3 a gallon is pretty tremendous in inflation-adjusted terms, Wright said. We'll get back there for sure. The announcement on April 17th that the strait would reopen caused one of the sharpest one-day drops in oil prices in history, and stock markets hit fresh all-time highs, and the expectation that the disruption would soon end. The waterway remains closed to marine traffic early on April 19 after a brief reprieve over the weekend in which both U.S. and Iranian leaders declared the critical oil thoroughfare open. Iran's armed forces turned back 2 tankers attempting to transit the strait after issuing warnings, Reuters reported, citing Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency. The outlet attributed the move to the continuing U.S. maritime blockade of Iran. The strait's closure comes after a dramatic back and forth over its status. At one point on April 17th, Trump declared the fight with Iran over in the Strait of Hormuz over, saying in a phone interview with USA Today that the deal reached was a great victory. That prompted Iran leader Mohammad B. Ghalibaf to slam President's comments as false, saying the strait remained closed to vessels not authorized by the Iranian military as long as the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports continues. Ship tracking website Marine Traffic appeared to show no vessels crossing the strait early on April 19th. During a mass celebrated in Angola city of Galamba on April 19th, Pope Leo praised the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon as a feud simmers between the Catholic leader and the U.S. president over the Iran war. Leo told the crowd gathered at the southern African nation that the temporary pause in fighting between Israel forces and the Iran-backed group Hezbollah in Lebanon is a, quote, reason for hope. The American-born Pope is in the middle of a four-nation African tour. He has been an outspoken critic of the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran over the past several weeks, which has repeatedly caught the ire of Trump. Our next article is titled, Border Crossing Lets Tourists Wade Home. Dateline Boquillas Crossing Port of Entry. At a bend in the Rio Grande, American tourists wade the river from Mexico, climb a sandy embankment in the United States, and fish out their passports. In a tiny stuccoed customs house deep inside the Big Bend National Park, the Boquillas Crossing Port of Entry is a small miracle of diplomacy, unique along the 1,954-mile U.S.-Mexican border. It has inspired a country song, bucked a border wall, and survived despite increasingly hardline U.S. border security measures. Fording the river on foot is not only allowed, but encouraged when the water is low. On high water days, tourists board a rowboat ferry for the 2-minute trip. Earlier this year, President Donald Trump's plan to build a border wall through Big Bend threatened to cut off this port from the river in the Mexican village of Boquilla de Carmen, where some 200 residents depend on American tourism. Fierce bipartisan opposition prompted the administration to back off on the plans. For now, the border is the river unfettered by steel. On the U.S. side, in the customs building nestled among the cacti and weeping mesquite, a single U.S. Customs and Border Protection officer checks passports. Oftentimes, a park ranger staffs the port instead, relying on El Paso, Texas-based customs officers to check passports virtually. Roughly 24,340 pedestrians cross here in 2025, according to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. The port only opens Friday to Monday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Across the river in Mexico, men hawk rides in their dusty pickups, on horseback or by donkey, take tourists 3/4 of a mile up a dirt road. The village at the top consists of 2 restaurants. The more expensive one has a view of a steep canyon and the Rio Grande below, and a smattering of houses. Children rush tourists with baskets in hand, selling bracelets and trinkets with the "No Wall" slogan. In the Treaty of 1847, Guadalupe Hidalgo established the middle of the Rio Grande as the boundary between Texas and Mexico, meaning it was a fluid border that would float from thence to the middle of that river, following the deepest channel, as the river flooded, narrowed, or shifted course. Mining attracted settlers to the region in the 1890s. Tourism keeps the Mexican village alive today. The river ran aqua blue and crystalline on Monday in late March. Its sometimes murky waters cleared and cooled by a spring. American tourists can't stop talking about the border wall or its apparent cancellation, said Ventura Falcon, who owns Boquilla restaurant on the Mexican side. That's all they're talking about, he said, while tallying tabs. He's against the construction of a barrier this remote crossing, roughly 150 miles from the nearest town of Substance in Mexico. But what can we do? We're on the Mexican side, he said. If the U.S. builds a wall, the problem is going to be over there, but the consequences will affect us, too. Big Bend National Park extends over more than 801,000 acres in Texas. In Mexico, more than 2 million acres of mountainous and high desert landscape are protected under a different scheme involving its federal government and a corporate patron, the Mexican Cement Company, or Cemex. Before the September 11, 2001 terrorist attack, there were informal border crossings up and down the Rio Grande, places where tiny twin border communities existed to support one another through trade, tourism, or mutual aid. 2019 and 2021, Boquilla del Carmen firefighters helped put out wildfires in Big Bend National Park. The creation of the Department of Homeland Security in the wake of the 9/11 ushered in a new era. Border Patrol choked off informal crossing points. But after significant lobbying on both sides of the border, President Barack Obama and Mexican President Felipe Calderon reached an agreement in 2010, in principle, to reopen the crossing at Boquilla. Their joint statement envisioned a sprawling binational protected area that would stretch across the border. It was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's idea, a vision dating to the 1930s that has never been fully realized. The crossing finally reopened in 2013. A plaque outside the port of entry offers this. The larger idea of connecting visitors to the preserved lands of both nations persists today, with hopes that the initial dream of a different frontier will become a reality. Outside the Boquilla restaurant, the sun glared and a stiff wind whipped embroidered aprons hanging on a line. A couple of tourists sipped margaritas in blown glass cups. Inside, Falcon delivered hot plates of food to Chester Barber and his daughter, Alma. They'd driven to Texas from Alabama, and Barber had ticked off the sights they'd seen in Big Bend so far. Santa Elena Canyon and the Lost Mine Trail. No, Boquilla's. It was his daughter's first time in Mexico. They floated over. We're very much against any wall, definitely around Big Bend, said Barber, who first visited the park in 1982. We're going to buy some bumper stickers if we can find them. Texas country crooner Robert Earl Keen wrote an ode to this little crossing in the 1990s when he sang about taking his sweetheart on a rowboat across the Rio Grande for $2 in a weathered hand, paid to a captain named Pablo. The song tells the story of a long, hot afternoon on the Mexican side, singing and drinking cold beer, a gringo honeymoon. U.S. and Mexican presidents have come and gone. Politics whip right and left, winds through a canyon. The river swells, the river dries. The rowboat captain is called Adrian now, charges $5 a ride. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Our next article, still from page 1 of USA Today, is titled Women in Congress Flex Their Power to Fight Abuse. The author is Zachary Shermelli. Dateline, Washington. When two of their colleagues faced mounting accusations of sexual assault and misconduct last week, two most powerful leaders in the House of Representatives, both men, refused to demand their resignations. Women in Congress weren't having it. In a matter of days, rank-and-file female lawmakers banded together across the party lines to oust Eric Swalwell and Tony Gonzalez. Rather than face being removed from office after embarrassing votes of their peers, California Democrat and Texas Republican, respectively, resigned within an hour of each other. It was a striking demonstration of bipartisan resolve on Capitol Hill, and on the heels of the overwhelming approval of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It was just the latest example of female legislators teaming up at odds with the men in charge of Congress to force accountability for prominent figures accused of hurting women. As the Swalwell allegations reached a fever pitch, two congresswomen in particular, Representative Anna Paulina Luna, a Florida Republican, and Representative Teresa Leger Fernandez, a New Mexico Democrat, worked in close collaboration on resolutions to expel Swalwell and Gonzalez. Both women told USA Today their efforts to expose abuse by powerful men are just getting started. This should have happened a while ago, Luna said. Swalwell had a notable and, until recently, relatively successful career in Congress. After serving as a local city council member, he represented California's 15th congressional district, which included the southwest side of San Francisco, from 2013 to 2023. He represented the 14th district, including Alameda County, from 2023 to 2026. A longtime ally of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, he was one of the key players during President Donald Trump's second impeachment trial over the January 6th insurrection. He built up enough political clout over the years to run for governor of California, and with his viral movements and social media savvy, become a front runner in the primary. All that professional progress seemingly exploded on Friday afternoon when multiple women accused him of sexual assault and misconduct in reports in the San Francisco Chronicle and on CNN. Swalwell had denied those allegations, calling them absolutely false. It didn't take long for Luna to decide enough was enough. The next day, she vowed to introduce a resolution to expel Swalwell. Expelling a member of Congress is exceedingly rare. The last member of the House of Representatives to be successfully expelled was George Santos, who fabricated much of his resume. Initially, Luna wanted to combine her Swalwell measure with another one to force out Gonzalez. The Texas Republican, who represented parts of San Antonio and El Paso, recently admitted to having an extramarital affair with a staffer who died by self-immolation in September after her husband said the interlude broke up their marriage. Gonzalez later said on a podcast that he'd, quote, made a mistake and had, quote, a lapse of judgment. After learned procedural rules would prevent her from pairing the two resolutions, a Democrat offered to help. Leger Fernandez, who's also the chair of the House Democratic Women's Caucus, said she was drawing up her own bill to oust Gonzalez. They agreed to support one another. She was one of the few stepping up to the plate, Luna told USA Today. Meanwhile, the two men in charge of leading the chamber were notably muted. With a mere two-vote margin in the House, neither Republican Speaker Mike Johnson nor Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries seemed eager to give up a congressional seat. Johnson had already urged Gonzalez not to seek re-election, but he didn't call for his expulsion. Jeffries didn't publicly tell Salvo to step down either. He did, however, say the allegations were disturbing and encouraged the Californian to end his gubernatorial campaign. It wasn't the first time in the 119th Congress that female legislatures forced a tectonic political shift. Late last year, they also paved the way for passing the bipartisan law to compel the release of Justice Department documents about Jeffrey Epstein, who died in custody while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. After Johnson declined to bring the legislature to the floor, Republican Representative Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert became crucial signatures on a petition to force the bill for a vote. Then Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene also played a key role, arguably sacrificing her political career to support the measure. That decision became an element of a rift that developed between her and President Donald Trump before she resigned from Congress. A newly sworn-in lawmaker, Representative Adelita Grijalvo, a Democrat from Arizona, became the last supporter needed to bring the Epstein File Transparency Act for debate. Justice cannot wait another day, she said from the House floor as she single-handedly triggered the vote. An ethical reckoning on Capitol Hill may just be beginning. Luna said she's pushing the Senate's ethics panel to investigate other lawmakers who may have been aware of Swalwell's alleged behavior. Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democrat from New York, and Nancy Mace, the Republican from South Carolina, whose political views on most matters couldn't be more divergent, agreed about separately ousting Representative Corey Mills, a Florida Republican under an ethics investigation related to allegations of assault and financial impropriety. Mills told News Nation that considering the accusations he's facing in the same light as those against Swalwell and Gonzalez would not be a fair comparison. In addition, Boebert, a Colorado Republican, said she's exploring legislation to keep Swalwell from receiving his pension. Starting in 2042, he'll be eligible for nearly $22,000 annually, according to an analysis shared with USA Today by the independent National Taxpayers Union Foundation. In the same year, Gonzalez would also begin receiving $8,700 per year. The stakes of all those efforts will be heightened during the approaching midterm elections. Just 7 months away, the contests could return control of the House to Democrats. If that happens, the pressure to hold men in Congress accountable won't stop, Leger Fernandez told USA Today. Once we get the gavels back, you will see us taking on these kinds of issues, she said. Our next article is titled, Schwartz tapped to be CDC director. Former Deputy Surgeon General is Trump's pick. The article is by Ken Altucker. President Donald Trump has nominated former Deputy Surgeon General Erica Schwartz, a physician, as director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Schwartz is a retired Rear Admiral in the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps and was a Deputy Surgeon General during COVID-19 pandemic during Trump's first term. Schwartz played a key role in the nation's pandemic response, helping coordinate national preparedness in the first year of the health crisis. She's nominated to take over an agency that's not been had a permanent director since August, when Dr. Susan Monarez was ousted. Trump cited Schwartz's academic credentials, earning biomedical engineering and MD degrees from Brown University, and her service in the U.S. military. She's a star, Trump said in a post on Truth Social on April 16th. Trump also said he was naming healthcare executive Sean Slovinsky from Texas Health Commissioner Jen Sufford and top FDA official Sarah Brenner to senior CDC roles. Slovinsky will be the CDC's Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer. Schuford will be Deputy Director and Chief Medical Officer, and Brenner will be Senior Counselor for Public Health. National Institutes of Health Director Jay Bhattacharya has been the CDC's acting director since mid-February and will remain in place until the new director is confirmed. If confirmed by the Senate, Schwartz will lead the nation's top public health agency amid changes to vaccine policy under Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. Political health experts praise Schwartz's credentials, but question whether she would have the autonomy to lead the agency. This seems like a dream pick, said Jennifer Nuzzo, Director of Pandemic Center at Brown University's School of Public Health. The bigger question is whether she'll be allowed to do the job. In 2025, Kennedy, a vaccine skeptic, fired all 17 original members of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which recommends vaccine use for adults and children. Kennedy replaced them with members whom critics have called unqualified. On March 16th, a Massachusetts federal judge temporarily blocked HHS's reshaping of federal vaccine panel, siding with the American Academy of Pediatrics and other medical groups. Polls have shown most voters disapprove of Kennedy's moves to overhaul the vaccination schedule. A poll in February found the public's trust in the CDC was at its lowest point, according to the KFF poll on health information and trust. Fewer than half of the respondents said they trust the agency a fair amount to give reliable vaccine information, a drop of 10 percentage points since the beginning of Trump's second term. Schwartz's selection is a good pick as a person who could be the CDC director under any administration, said Amish Alaja, an infectious disease physician at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. But he questioned whether she'll have the ability to disagree with Kennedy over vaccine policies. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour. This means we turn to the money section of USA Today. And let me cue up our first article. It is titled, Walmart's Great Value Brand Gets a New Look. The author is Betty Lynn Fisher. Walmart is updating the look of its logo and packaging for the company's Great Value private label brand. The redesign is the first major change to the brand's packaging, which first launched in 1993. In 10 years, he said Scott Morris, Senior Vice President of Private Brands for Walmart US. It's time after a 10-year cycle to renew the brand, give it a fresh look, something that's modernized and connects with the customer, Morris told USA Today. The biggest change to the update Great Value logo was the background color being a darker blue. The role of blue is an important part of the brand and part of the brand identity, said David Hartman, Vice President of Creative at Walmart. The retailer saw this as an opportunity to make the color more of an intentional signifier that's more prominent throughout the customer shopping experience. The redesign will be on nearly 10,000 food and consumable great value items. It will phase in over the next 2 years, starting with snacks, cereals, cream cheese, and sour cream items. Additionally, the new design will include consistent placement of nutritional information and benefit claims, the retailer said. The Great Value brand is the largest food consumables consumer packaged goods brand in the United States, according to Walmart. Says the brand can be found in 9 out of 10 U.S. households. Walmart customers are saving an average of 35% a year by buying private label brand products over name brand products, Morris said. As shoppers look for better deals to stretch their dollars, acceptance of private label brands across retailers and manufacturers has been growing. As American grocery shoppers continue to navigate high prices, store brands are providing even greater relief at checkout. Peggy Davies, president of the Private Label Manufacturers Association, told USA Today. In fact, in the first quarter of 2026, consumers save an average of 17% compared to national brands, up from 12% 2025. According to a 2025 NIQ report on private labels, 53% of global consumers said they were likely to buy more private label products than ever before. Consumers may once have considered store brands subpar to brand names, but the stigma against private labels has faded, as 68% of global consumers say private labels are good alternatives to brand names. 69% of global consumers said private labels are good value for the money, and 60% of global consumers say they would buy more private label products if a larger variety were available. Additionally, 37% of consumers say they would be willing to pay the same or more than national brands for a store brand they like. We're seeing the price gap between national brands and store brands narrowing, which indicates a shopper that's willing to spend on premium store brands. Steve Zurich, Vice President for Strategic Analytics and Insight through Leadership at NIQ, told USA Today. There are also generational influences. Gen Z shoppers are on track to be the most loyal private brand buyers we've seen to date, as Zurich said. They're more critical of product attributes and have better experiences with the products they buy. In many cases, store brands over-deliver on these criteria at a discount. Store brand sales in 2025 increased at 3 times the rate of national brands, according to a report from the Private Label Manufacturers Association. Store brands rose 3.3% compared to 1.2% for national brands. Total store brand sales for 2025 came in at $282.8 billion. Our next article is titled Top Financial Advisory Firms Offer Guides. These advisors can navigate rocky economy. The article is by Jessica Bryant. Investing carries risks, even under the best economic conditions. And with geopolitical events such as the war in Iran roiling markets, investing feels more precarious than ever. In the 6 weeks that the United States and Israel launched strikes against Iran, global markets have plunged to steep losses, then clawed back gains, leaving everyday investors wondering what to do with their 401ks. That volatility, along with surging inflation, driven by soaring gas prices, leaving many Americans overwhelmed by the global issues affecting their daily costs and investments. So what can the average investor do amid the uncertainty? One of the best options is to hire a registered investment advisor, or RIA, who fits your financial needs. These advisors are trained to take a holistic approach to your financial life and have a duty to act in your best interest at all times. To ease your search for the right financial advisor, USA Today has partnered with market research firm Statistica to create our 4th annual Best Financial Advisory Firms list, which ranks the top 1,000 IRAs in the United States. To determine this ranking, we looked at the firm's assets under management, or AUM, over the short and long term. We also looked at the number of recommendations they received from both clients and peers. Firms are grouped by 4 asset size categories: up to $500 million in assets, $500 to $1 billion in assets, $1 billion to $5 billion in assets, and more than $5 billion in assets. This year's top 3 firms, Arex Advisory Partners, Waverly Advisors, and Focus Partners, all saw their AUM's long-term growth increase by more than 50%. Each firm's total AUM exceeds $5 billion. Alongside the 4th edition of this year's list, they're also featuring 50 rising stars for the first time. These are firms that have been in operation as registered investment advisors for 3 years or less and have already demonstrated significant growth and momentum. To be a rising star, firms had to meet all the same eligibility requirements as our traditional list. Instead of being scored on long-term AUM, they were assessed by their midterm AUM growth from 2023 to 2026. You can learn more about a firm's specialties and background on its website, as well as from the firm's Form ADV, which files with the SEC. You can verify a firm's registration with the SEC's Investment Advisor Public Disclosure Tool, check the backgrounds and any disciplinary actions at the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority's Broker Check website. For further details on the methodology behind the rankings, please visit us on Statistica's website or contact Andrea Corte at financialadvisors@statistica.com. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 38 minutes after the hour. Our next article is titled Spot the Deal. Here are 8 surprising places where buyers can find bargains. The author is Andrea Requer. All real estate is local, the old saying goes, even though housing markets across the country have moved relatively in tandem over the past several years. Now, however, things are shifting, and it's a good thing for anyone in the market to purchase a home. Nearly 2/3 of the nation's largest housing markets are either evenly balanced between buyers and sellers or considered to be buyers' markets outright, according to a report out of the 9th day of April. The traditional real estate industry rule of thumb has been that a seller's market is one with less than 4 months of supply of homes to buy, while a buyer's market is 6 months or greater. Balanced markets fall somewhere in between. But the new report from Realtor.com incorporates several additional factors to decide how to label a particular metro area market. In addition to inventory, it looks at market pace and competition and pricing pressure and adjustments. Markets aren't only categorized simply as seller market or buyer market, but assigned a time element as well. An early seller's market, for example, means that conditions mostly favor those in the market to sell, but are not yet at a peak of favorable conditions for those people. A late seller's market, for example, might mean the area has run its course for those looking to sell, may be ready to flip back to favoring buyers. Right now, all of the buyer's markets sit in what the framework calls early buyer conditions. Inventory is growing, price cuts are common, and buyers are starting to hold the upper hand. Importantly, it also suggests that their negotiating leverage is likely to get even stronger in the coming months. Strikingly, most of the metros in this category are those that boomed during the pandemic, including several Florida, Texas hotspots, and Atlanta. Stephen Freudenberg, a real estate agent in Atlanta, agrees that some parts of the metro area, especially those that are a bit farther from the city center, are definitely slowing down, feel like they're already in a buyer's market territory. But in desirable areas with top-ranked schools, Freudenberg buyers continue to face familiar struggles. The hot zones are hot, he said. Inventory's tight. The nice listings that are priced within reason and don't have obvious deficiencies are still getting multiple offers. For that reason, Freudenberg believes that not only is all real estate local, it's in fact hyper-local. Realtor.com economists say real estate and economic cycle is an important part of the housing market. Two metros could appear perfectly balanced, said Jay Krimmel, senior economist with Realtor.com, in an email exchange with USA Today. But one may be in the midst of losing and turning more buyer-friendly, while the other is tightening or shifting towards sellers. In general, Kimmel explained, the housing market tightens, reaches peak seller conditions, cools back toward balance, becomes more buyer-friendly, and eventually recovers again as conditions improve. He thinks that is a clockwise rotation. It's not always the case. Big outside shocks, think of COVID-19 pandemic, for example, or the interest rate hikes of 2022 can cause markets to stall, skip phases, or move in counterintuitive ways, he explained. Right now, for example, the Washington area, Las Vegas, and Phoenix are categorized as late balanced. The next phase would be early buyer. The data may suggest that those metros are heading in that direction, Krimmel said, but that's not inevitable. And the timing for any such transaction is also a big question. In summary, the Realtor.com tool may be used to investigate the conditions in any particular area, but not to time the market. It's also worth noting that after years of building too little across the country, sellers mostly still have the upper hand. It's all the same old story, Freudenberg told USA Today. Supply and demand are the metrics that matter. In areas where the supply of desirable homes is constrained and demand is high, it's still really tough to be a buyer. And let's cue up our next article here. We have to revert to part one of the newspaper as we're out of articles in the money section today. So this next article is back to page 1 of USA Today, and it is titled, "With No Competitors, Keytruda Cash Rolls In." Merck built a wall of patience to keep cancer drug prices and its profits high. Just a few weeks after President Donald Trump's December promise that prescription drug prices would plummet fast and furious, Patricia Brown checked into a California clinic for an infusion of Merck Company's blockbuster cancer drug, Keytruda. When the bill arrived, the clinic's charge for a 400 milligram dose dominated the page. $162,567.74. Brown, an accomplished cook battling lung cancer, owed about $2,000. With a six-figure charge to Brown and her insurance company, shows how quickly prices for cutting-edge medical treatments can balloon in the U.S. healthcare system. Someone has to pay: an employer, taxpayers, or regular people whose insurance premiums go up and up. The price of Keytruda for Americans starts high and often heads higher. Merck lists Brown's dose at an already steep $24,000. Then, depending on the insurer, the healthcare provider, and any number of middlemen, prices can rise. Merck CEO and Chairman Robert M. Davis lined up behind Trump in December alongside the pharmaceutical leaders at a White House news conference. He declared 100% support for the president's actions and vowed Merck would drop prices on diabetic drugs and a cardiovascular pill. He didn't say anything about cutting the cost of Keytruda, which accounted for $31.7 billion in worldwide sales in 2025, nearly half of Merck's revenue. Drugs have become a lifeline for a growing number of cancer patients around the world. But a joint investigation by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists and USA Today found that Merck had employed several tactics to keep Keytruda's price high, along with its profits. Merck protects the drug from generic competition behind a growing wall of patients. The company lobbies to avoid negotiating the price of the drug with Medicare. And though studies have said lower doses based on weight are effective and would save money, the company has not moved to change dosing. Some other countries, ICIJ found, such tactics have priced Keytruda out of reach of cancer patients who need it. In the United States, where Merck tallies about 60% of the drug's sales, the price generally begins with what Merck charges. Cost for the life-saving drug then increases as middlemen and health providers tack on charges. In a statement, Merck spokeswoman Julie Cunningham blamed high prices in the United States on pharmacy benefit managers and health insurers, middle players who extract rebates and fees, driving up costs for patients. America is the only country in the world where entities that don't make medicines take half of every dollar spent on brand medicines, she said. Merck's tactics with Keytruda are common and legal in the pharmaceutical industry. Once a drug company discovers an effective medicine that the public and the medical community demand, the company pulls legal levers to maintain that advantage for as long as it can. Squeezing as much life out of an original patent is par for the course in the drug industry, said Antonio Ciaccia, president of 3Axis Advisors, an expert in drug pricing. You get a breadwinner, you want to hold on to that breadwinner as long as you can. Scott Brown, a 63-year-old grocery store employee, caring for his wife, Patricia Brown, their home in Ranchero Cordova, California. For nearly a year, she fights advanced lung cancer that has spread to her brain and spine. The couple have been together for 40 years, briefly turned to Keytruda in November of 2025, alongside chemotherapy and radiation. Patricia Brown received the drug every 6 weeks till side effects on her thyroid forced her to stop. Looking at the bills, including the $162,000 bill for one Keytruda treatment from USC Davis Health. Scott Brown doubts prices for cancer treatment will ever fall. I would love for them to understand what the little guy's going through, he said of politicians and pharmaceutical executives, but I'm also a realist. Merck, either alone or jointly through partners, has employed the patent system to build a fortress around Keytruda of 50 active patients in the United States. Citing data from the Initiative for Medicines, Access and Knowledge, or IMAC, ICIJ tracked more than 1,200 patent applications filed by Merck and other cancer research businesses. These applications related to the drug were in 53 countries, regions, and territories. These patents could help Merck fend off competition and maintain high prices and billions of dollars in revenue for 14 years after its original patents expire 2028, ICG found. In a statement, Merck's Cunningham disputed those findings. Cunningham said it's a common myth that drug companies game the patent system with overlapping patents to delay competition. It's been repeatedly shown that patent counts do not predict timing of generic entry. Patents are a critical part of U.S. drug development system. In exchange for encouraging research and development of new drugs, patents allow drug companies an exclusive window to sell a brand name drug without competition from a less expensive generic or biosimilar. U.S. patents, which generally last 20 years from the application date, allow companies to enjoy a dominance in the market, charge higher prices, recover research and development costs, and earn profits to fund future research. Drug pricing experts say using patents to delay competition from companies offering less expensive versions is a common strategy. This scenario, where a drug company obtains dozens of patents protecting different aspects of a blockbuster drug in order to ward off competition, is quite common, said Dr. Benjamin Rome, a Harvard Medical School professor. Just the existence of this patent thicket can scare away companies who would otherwise seek to make biosimilar version of Keytruda, as the biosimilar makers need to spend exorbitant amounts of money to fight these patents in court. Merck is rolling out a new version of the medication, an injectable version called Keytruda QLEX. Merck expects many Keytruda users will switch to the new injectable version before Keytruda's original patent expires 2028. We expect to see between 30 and 40% adoption as we approach 2028, Cunningham said. If enough customers switch to the injectable version from the original infused Keytruda, could delay competition till the 2030s, ICIJ reported, citing 3 industry experts. While the Food and Drug Administration has approved Keytruda's dosing of 200 milligrams every 3 weeks or 400 milligrams every 6 weeks, some cancer researchers contend Merck promotes a higher dosage Keytruda than is necessary. The excess dosing could cost each patient an extra $75,000 over the course of their treatment, researchers of the World Health Organization say, totaling an estimate of $5 billion could be saved through 2040 just among lung cancer patients. And like other drug companies, Merck has lobbied and sued to prevent Medicare from negotiating lower drug prices. Inflation Reduction Act empowered Medicare, a federal insurance program for adults 65 and older, to negotiate lower prices on some of the federal insurers' costliest drugs. But President Donald Trump's tax cut and spending legislation 2025 delayed Medicare price negotiations for some drugs, including Keytruda, by at least 1 year. Merck Senior Vice President Johanna Herman defended the company's pricing practices, saying that Keytruda's price reflects its value to patients and healthcare systems. We have a long history of responsible pricing of our medicines to reflect their value, patients, payers, and society, she said in a letter to ICIJ. Beyond Merck's list price of $12,031 for 200 milligram treatment of Keytruda, the amount Americans pay for immunotherapy is a spin of the wheel, depending on where they live, where they get it, and what their insurance covers. Middlemen such as drug wholesalers and pharmacy benefit managers each take a piece of a blockbuster drug profit. Interviews with patients and a review of drug pricing transparency data show the actual rates billed by tens of thousands of dollars per treatment, depending on the patient's home state, type of treatment, healthcare provider, and insurer. Patients interviewed by USA Today shared hospital bills ranging from about $15,000 for a standard 200 milligram treatment to more than $162,000 for Patricia Brown's double dose, almost 7 times costlier than Merck's list price. Brown's insurance company paid more than $110,000 to UC Davis Health, which administered her double dose. The insurer, United Healthcare, also discounted the bill more than $57,000, a hospital invoice shows. A spokesman for UC Davis Health said hospital pricing is complex, reflects the full cost of safely delivering care, not just the cost of the medication. Sarif, a San Francisco firm that compiles records monthly for more than 200 commercial insurers, shared data with USA Today showing negotiated in-network rates for standard 200 milligram Keytruda treatment range broadly depending on where the patient lives, which insurance company and medical provider they use, and how it's billed. Overall, Sarif's health records show the majority negotiated prices across the country fell between $8,600 and $22,200 for a single treatment, while a handful of extreme prices reported to be over $100,000. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for the 20th day of April. We'll take a short break now. Your reader for this hour has been Tom Scanlon.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Jean. Lawrence, the focus of Giants, Bengals Big Deal by Nate Davis. The 2026 NFL Draft isn't 5 full days away, but its outlook shifted seismically on the evening of April 18th. The New York Giants have agreed to trade 3-time Pro Bowl defensive lineman Dexter Lawrence III to the Cincinnati Bengals and will get the 10th overall selection in return, giving the G-Men 2 picks in the top 10. New York is also scheduled to choose 5th overall. 2 people with direct knowledge of the situation confirmed the trade to USA Today's Sports' Nate Davis and Tyler Dragon. The people requested anonymity because the move is not yet finalized. Lawrence, a.k.a. Sexy Dexy, still has to pass a physical in Cincinnati and agree to new contract parameters before the transaction becomes official. This will be the first time since 2022 the Giants have had 2 selections in the top 10. They also enlisted 2 players in round 1 last year, drafting pass rusher Abdul Carter 3rd overall before dealing back into the first round to get quarterback Jackson Dart in the 25th spot. What does the Dexter Lawrence trade mean for the Giants? Major draft firepower and flexibility for a rebooting organization that has won playoff victory since it won Super Bowl 46 to cap the 2011 season. Unlike the 2027 draft that is perceived to be packed with talent, this year's might only have a dozen or so top-tier prospects, and the Giants now stand to get 2 in 1 year under newly hired coach John Harbaugh. There doesn't appear to be a player of Lawrence's caliber available, but there are some seemingly quality defensive linemen Harbaugh and general manager Joe Schoen could target in the 2nd round with the 37th overall selection. A receiver could be in order at number 5 or number 10 given the departure of Dwayne Robinson in free agency and Malik Neighbors' recovery from ACL and meniscus injuries. Malik is going to be more into training camp and closer to the season, Harbaugh said of his recovery timeline this month. What does the Dexter Lawrence trade mean for the Bengals? They're certainly hoping a return to the AFC's elite ranks, and at a time when Cincy is the only AFC North team without a first-year head coach. The Bengals lost Super Bowl 56 to cap the 2021 season and fell short in the AFC Championship game the next year, but have not been back to the playoffs since. The championship window is my whole career, quarterback Joe Burrow said at the time, but he has not been able to lead the 58-year-old franchise to its first Lombardi trophy. A Pro Bowl selection from the 2022 through 2024, Lawrence had 21 sacks and 151 quarterback pressures over that period per Next Gen Stats. But his production tailed off dramatically last season when he had 26 pressures and a half sack. However, Lawrence should be motivated by the move and the money that's coming to him. And though Cincinnati just shed its own disgruntled star defender Trey Hendrickson, signing with the Baltimore Ravens during free agency, the Bengals nicely diversified by adding several veteran defenders, including pass rusher Boy Mafe, DT Jonathan Allen, and safeties Brian Cook and Kyle Duggar. If the revamped unit can merely hold opponents to 27 points while Burrow and company go off for 35, then this team should be in the mix to reach Super Bowl 61. Contract details. Lawrence's financial situation has been a source of consternation with the Giants for a few years. Unhappy with his current 4-year, $87.5 million pact, which runs through the 2027 season, Lawrence had requested a trade from the Giants this month. Lawrence is due $39.5 million over the next 2 years, but the league's top interior defensive linemen now average north of $25 million annually. The Bengals, who have more than $61 million to spend in 2027 per over the cap, are expected to redress Lawrence's contract as part of the transaction. Trade grades. Cincinnati Bengals, a team that's finished second to last league-wide in total defense in 2 of the last 3 seasons and 25th overall in 2024, continues to get a major remake on that side of the ball. The acquisition of Lawrence, who is just 28, comes at a time when the team seems to have as good a shot as any to win its division, especially with Burrow in his prime. And given how weak the 2026 draft seems to be on top-tier talent, and especially so at defensive tackle, this seems like a calculated risk that could pay off handsomely, though Lawrence will obviously need to play better than he did in 2025. Grade B. New York Giants. A team clearly in rebuild posture, even if expectations have been significantly raised after the arrival of Harbaugh, now has two more assets with which to restock the roster and, perhaps, help Dart's development directly. Lawrence's departure leaves a void that will need to be addressed, but Harbaugh and Schoen know a defense that ranked 28th with Lawrence in 2025 would need work. Grade B+. Rising up the board. He started playing 4 years ago. Now he's a first-round pick, by Jarrett Bell. And the final stop of Max Elinehor's Winfield pre-draft tour, San Francisco. Since April 1st, the former Arizona State tackle has crisscrossed the NFL universe in meeting with 12 teams for top 30 visits, which is some kind of clue underscoring his rising stock as the NFL draft looms. It's a business, with teams bringing in all the guys they like or are interested in. Ehinekor, 22, told USA Today Sports last week on the eve of a visit with the 49ers that came on the final day when teams could conduct such sessions. You just kind of talk to them eye to eye, the O-line coach teaching you in a room, seeing how you retain information. They want to learn about your character as a player. It's definitely been an awesome experience. Maybe this winding journey leads to Ehinekor, ranked 27th on the big board for USA Today Sports, getting picked in the first round on April 23rd. Regardless that so many teams during the draft process have wanted a closer look at a prospect who has played football for all of 4 years, Ehinekor moved for the U.S. from Nigeria when he was 13, seems to add value. Asked to identify the teams he's visited, like some sort of pop quiz, Ehinekor, 6'6" and 321 pounds, quickly rattled off the stops: Patriots, Bears, Ravens, Panthers, Dolphins, Raiders, Packers, Bengals, Niners, Cardinals, Eagles. How many is that? He stopped and asked. Dude, I'm going to have to check the tape. Did I say Houston? He added. Bingo. Check the box on retention. I'm just taking it day by day, Ehinekor maintained. Right now, I'm just finishing out this process with meetings and stuff. I'm not trying to get too far ahead. When that day comes, there's going to be a lot of emotions. It is one thing that Ehinekor has solidified his place on NFL map during the draft process after not allowing a sack and just 3 quarterback hits, according to Pro Football Focus, of 482 pass-blocking snaps last season from his right tackle post. But he also drew rave reviews for his week at the Senior Bowl, then distinguished himself at the Scouting Combine with a 4.91 second mark in the yard dash that was 0.10 shy of the combine record for his position. Video from another moment at Arizona State's Pro Day, featuring one-on-one work against hands-on New England coach Mike Vrabel, went viral. The climb is there, NFL Network draft analyst Daniel Jeremiah said during a video conference with reporters. Every time I watch him in the fall to when I watched him at the Senior Bowl, from the beginning of the week to the end of the week, the guy just keeps getting better and better. He just continues to ride that wave. How offensive lineman Max Ehinekor was discovered, which is only part of why Ehinekor, with all that upside, is one of the most intriguing players in the draft. Listen to Saga Tutili, Arizona State's edgy offensive line coach, provide a snapshot. Tutili, who was then at Fresno State, discovered Ehinekor when he went to check out another junior college player at East Los Angeles College. Then, all of a sudden, I was like, who in the hell is that kid? Tutili says to USA Today Sports. That kid certainly had the size, frame, and athleticism, and was so raw. Ahina Shore's high school didn't have a football team. He played soccer and basketball. His potential as a power forward, though, was such that his AAU coach introduced him to the football coach at ELAC, Bobby Godinez, who in turn introduced Ahina Shore to the sport that now might make him famous. They did a good job with him at ELAC, Tootlee said, but he wasn't very good. His film sucked, but you saw he had some of the athletic ability and wasn't scared. When Tootlee went to ASU as part of Kenny Dillingham's original staff, he lured Horashine and others by offers then with a pledge that resonated with truth. We didn't BS him, Tootlee said. We just said, you're not very good. You actually suck, but you've got some talent. I want to develop you and work with you. Ahina Shore hardly disputes the pivotal characterization. Yeah, man, he was truthful, he recalls. There were a lot of people telling me all the good stuff. It sucks hearing the bad part, and it didn't sound good at the time, but it was something I needed to hear. If you want to grow as a player, you've got to be able to take the coaching. Although Tootlee originally told Ahina Shore that he thought it might be 2 years before he cracked the lineup, circumstances dictated otherwise. Due to injuries, Ahina Shore was pressed into duty for 6 games in 2023. On his first snap, he was run over by Bull Rush, as Tootlee remembers, and it ignited a steady rise. Fast forward to his second spring ball camp, and he came out swinging. Literally, Tootlee said, emphasizing a certain tenacity. He was fighting everybody in a good way, challenging people physically. He took some steps to control aggression, and then his football IQ was unreal. What makes O.L. Ahina Shore an elite 2026 NFL draft prospect? Tootlee says the mental aspect is the most impressive aspect of Ahina Shore's package. That classroom detail accelerated his curve. Yet beyond using extensive film study of NFL players to help refine techniques and his tendency to delve into concepts of play design, Ahina Shore's former coach points to another defining impression. Playing basketball, he was told he wasn't good enough and should try football, said Tootlee, a two-time All-Big Scar guide at Portland State. You talk about adversity. When I was his age, if somebody told me I couldn't play football, I'd lose it. So he found another sport and got good at it. It just shows a lot for him, his culture, his people. Just like all of us that came from a different background, he's very proud of his family, his heritage, his last name. I think that's part of his drive to be successful. Hearing this humanizes the draft. For all the mock drafts, the meat market inspections of the prospects, and the workouts and team visits, the journey for men in the mix to get drafted is so personal. Real dreams, real opportunities, real people. When Ahina Shore arrived at Arizona State, one of the first demands from his O-line coach was to stop anyone from mispronouncing his name with an instant correction. That was just not me. Shoot, that went for everyone in the O-line room, Ahina Shore said. You had to know how to say each other's name right. We had some Polynesian kids. There was another Nigerian kid. Just make sure we could say each other's names right. That's how you build a relationship. Know what I mean? You find yourself more interested in the person. Ahina Shore has come a long way from a small village in Nigeria. How the NFL limelight awaits, with ample opportunity for people to know his name. Knicks are real NBA title contenders by Lorenzo Reyes. Knicks guard Michael Bridges, 25, celebrates with Josh Hart during the April 18th game against the Atlanta Hawks in New York. In the first quarter, Jalen Brunson dropped 19 points on 8 field goal conversions. The rest of the game, he would make one more shot. The bench contributed just 20 points the entire contest, well below their regular season average of 31.6 per game. Yet, despite the imperfect offense, the New York Knicks toppled the Atlanta Hawks on April 18th in Game 1 of their first-round NBA Eastern Conference playoff series, 113-102, in a sign that this team is built to win in different ways. It can explode on offense, or it can grind teams down. With OG Anunoby and Michael Bridges, New York has always had arguably the top duo of wing perimeter defenders in the NBA. But the night of April 18th showed the Knicks may have unlocked another element that can elevate this defense into a championship-caliber outfit. Forward Josh Hart, a high-energy utility player who can slide into numerous roles asked of him, has blossomed into an irritating defender who is now often tasked with guarding the opponent's best player. In Game 1, that made him the primary defender on the Hawks' Jalen Johnson. This started the last few weeks of the regular season, and it has freed Anunoby and Bridges to hound other players. It has also elevated the entire defense. Josh is very good at getting to the ball and trying to make the ball handler uncomfortable, Coach Mike Brown said. Having Josh, having Michael, having OG, they allowed us to be versatile defensively. That versatility gives New York something it can use in this series and beyond, particularly against teams whose players share ball handling duties. It allows the Knicks to switch pick and rolls. And since the primary function of the pick and roll is to create offensive mismatches, the ability to switch players, especially when they're exceptional defenders, negates that. This is a problem for Atlanta. The Hawks, the hottest team in the Eastern Conference after the All-Star break, rely on a fluid offensive system in which 4 players split ball handling duties. Atlanta doesn't rely on play calls as much as it does on general concepts and actions, and asks its players to read the defense. The Hawks want their players to attack into open space. Against the Knicks in Game 1, those 4 players, Johnson, Nickel Alexander-Walker, C.J. McCollum, and Dyson Daniels, were pestered and harassed. The Hawks shot a respectable 43.7% from the floor, but that doesn't tell the whole story. To that point, 9 of the 12 Hawk turnovers were committed by the 4 ball handlers. The other thing this swarming, versatile defense offers the Knicks is instant offense. New York emphasized throwing the ball ahead, pushing it into open floor, and getting high percentage points in transition. New York generated a +9 advantage in fast break points. I think we just have a great group of guys that are locked in, Knicks guard Miles McBride told reporters after the game. I don't think it's anybody individually, it's just our whole team being locked in on trying to make everything tough on them. Every single night, it's non-negotiable. We have to bring it every single night. So, how exactly do the Hawks combat this? Game 2 will tip off April 20th, 8 p.m. ET and NBC here in Madison Square Garden, and the primary objective will be to source easier offense. For one, they'll need to find a way to break through that defensive pressure, perhaps abandoning pick and rolls in favor of an offense that's more fluid. Because when the Knicks went on runs in the second half, it was when the ball stagnated for Atlanta. Walking away from the game, turnovers, I had 5 turnovers. There's things that we can do better from a spacing standpoint, McCollum said. Moving the ball a little more, being intentional with the ball and player movement, I think all those things can factor into more success for us. I think it's all about responding, and I look forward to responding on Monday. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Sooners secure 8th gymnastics crown by Jenny Carlson. Faith Torres and the rest of the Oklahoma Sooners women's gymnasts sprinted across the floor, snagged the trophy, lofted it into the air, and then fell into formation for photos. Like they'd done it before, which they have. OU women's gymnastics is the national champion again. Needing a late surge, the Sooners overcame a near disaster on balance beam, rallied on floor exercise, and won their 2nd consecutive title, as well as the program's 8th overall. This one came by less than 1/10 of a point. OU 198.1625, LSU 198.0750. We never take for granted the opportunity to do this or how difficult it is, OU coach KJ Kindler said, and LSU made it less extra difficult on us today, pushing us to our limit. OU's national championship haul is third in women's gymnastics behind Georgia, 10, and UCLA, 9. Since the Sooners have won 8 of the last 12 and were on track for a 9th had COVID-19 not derailed the 2020 season, they are solidly in dynasty territory. This was a team effort from top to bottom, said Kindler, who has coached all 8 championships. Everybody obviously had amazing moments on our team, but it was a fight to the finish. Through the first half of April 18th, though, the Sooners were in great shape, going big on vault, 49.6, and being solid on uneven bars, 49.4875. They led the team competition by less than 1/10 of a point. Then, disaster struck on balance beam. It is an event on which the Sooners are normally rock solid, but Addison Fada started with a so-so routine and then Kira Wells fell off the beam. OU had to have 4 hits on its last 4 routines to have a chance. Freshman Ella Murphy got the Sooners back on track with a monster 9.9375. Guts of steel, Kindler said. Torres anchored on beam with a near-perfect 9.9500, and the Sooners had hope. Then they went out and killed the Tigers' hope. Even as LSU was solid on the beam, OU was spectacular on the floor. The Sooners had 5 scores of 9.9000 or better, including 3 of over 9.9375. The best came last, as Torres, who won the all-around title a day earlier, hit a 9.9500 in the anchor spot, her final college routine. I thought we did a good job of staying in our bubble and just reminding ourselves to go for it, Torres said. Leave it all on the floor. Or, as KJ said, leave it on the floor for the floor. U.S. record holder to finally race in Boston by Mark Gianotto. The fastest female marathon runner in North America is finally going to run in the most famous marathon of all. Emily Sisson, a 2-time Olympian and the U.S. record holder in the marathon, is set to compete in the Boston Marathon for the first time. Organizers officially announced in December the 34-year-old would be in the field when the 130th edition takes place on April 20th. The Boston Marathon has been a race I've looked forward to competing in for many years, Sisson said, according to the race website. I'm ready to take on the challenging course and be part of one of the legendary races in our sport. Sisson's inclusion means this will be the first Boston Marathon since 1978, and only the 3rd time ever both the men's and women's American record holders will start the race. Connor Mance, a 2024 Olympian who finished 4th in last year's Boston Marathon, is also slated to be in the men's field. Sisson set the U.S. record at the 2022 Chicago race when she finished in 2 hours, 18 minutes, and 29 seconds. Sisson and Jess McClain, who was the top female runner in America last year's Boston Marathon with a 7th place finish, lead the contenders from the United States. Defending champion Sharon Lakiti of Kenya remains a favorite after setting a course record in Boston in 2025. Besides Mance, American Clayton Young had a top 10 finish last year in Boston. They will try to chase down the Kenyan John Kiror, who won last year. Luke Kennard steps up in Lakers upset by Josh Peter. The 2025-26 NBA postseason is finally here after a thrilling play-in tournament saw the Phoenix Suns, Orlando Magic, Philadelphia 76ers, and Portland Trail Blazers officially earn their spot in the playoffs. The postseason action continued on April 18th as the Houston Rockets visited the Los Angeles Lakers in Game 1 of the first round. LeBron James led the Lakers past the Rockets 107-98 in Game 1 of their first round Western Conference playoff series at Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles. The 41-year-old James had 19 points, 13 assists, 8 rebounds, and a lot of help. Reserve guard Luke Kennard was vital too, scoring a game-high 27 points and shooting 5 for 5 from the three-point range. Kennard's performance was even more important with Lakers leading scorers Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves on the bench with injuries, while Rockets star Kevin Durant also missed the game with an injury. During a post-game interview with Mike Trudell of Spectrum Sportsnet, LeBron James said Luke Kennard was poised. Poised, ready for the moment, and we need everybody to step up, and he stepped up big time, James said. It wasn't that Kennard was 5 for 5 from the three-point range while scoring the game, high 27 points. James said every shot was timely, especially in the fourth quarter, he added. Of the Lakers' success in Game 1, James said, "You've got to be able to keep your composure. Playoffs is about runs, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of obstacles. You've got to be able to keep your composure and stay even-keeled. It was a good first test for us." NHL playoff stars falter in Game 1 opener again, by Mike Brem. The Dallas Stars, despite reaching the Western Conference Finals the last 3 seasons, have a poor record in Game number 1. Their effort in their April 18th playoff opener was poorer than usual. The Stars were routed 6-1 at home by the Minnesota Wild and find themselves trailing after the first game of the series for the 9th time in their last 11 openers. Stars coach Glenn Gulutzan said, "To a man, the Wild were better than his team, which didn't happen a lot during regular season. You can't get your game going if you're not going to win the battles," he told reporters. "You can take any metric, and if you lose skating battles and puck battles, you're always on the receiving end of everything negative." The Stars, under previous coach Peter DeBoer, overcame a 5-1 loss in their 2024-25 playoff opener to beat the Colorado Avalanche in 7 games, so they are far from trouble. "There's room for growth," Gulutzan said. The winners and losers from the opening night of the playoffs. The winners, Jesper Wallstedt, Minnesota Wild. Coach John Hines chose the rookie over veteran Philip Gustafsson for Game 1. Wallstedt made 27 saves for a victory in his first playoff game. Coaches made the right decisions in net in other games. Carolina veteran Frederick Anderson got the start over Brandon Busey and had a 22-save shutout. Stuart Skinner kept the Penguins in the game during their loss to the Philadelphia Flyers. Porter Martone, Philadelphia Flyers. What a move on his goal, which ended up being the game winner at Pittsburgh. He skated hard into the zone, stopped, circled back, and ripped a shot past Skinner for a 3-1 lead. Martone is 19 and just signed after his Michigan State season ended. Wild's power play. The Wild had the 3rd best power play in the regular season behind Dallas and the Edmonton Oilers. They connected twice in the game, with both goals by Joel Eriksson. Losers, Jake Oettinger, Dallas Stars. He was pulled in his last playoff game in 2025 by DeBoer and gave up 5 goals on April 18th. Gulutzan never considered pulling Oettinger, saying he didn't think goaltending was an issue in the loss. "I'm going to be a lot better next game," Oettinger said. Sidney Crosby, Pittsburgh Penguins. The Flyers did what they could to get Crosby off his game. He took 2 penalties in the game, the first one for pulling off Jamie Drysdale's helmet. He was sent off the ice for a retaliatory slash on Travis Sanheim, who had cross-checked him. That meant Crosby was unavailable as the Penguins were pressing to rally from a 3-1 deficit late in the 3rd period. "We have to stay out of a little more and trust that when we are going to try and stir it up, that they're going to be penalized for it," Crosby told reporters. Artem Zub, Ottawa Senators. The Senators' defenseman delivered a big hit on Carolina's Seth Jarvis, but took the worst of it. He exited the game, leaving Ottawa short-handed on defense in a 2-0 loss. There was no update on his condition after the game. First female BLM ump keeps getting better and better, by Gabe Laquez. Jen Powell was behind the plate for her first Major League game in the Automated Balls Strikes Challenge System era. And the first woman to serve as an ump in a Major League Baseball game stood her ground against the so-called robots. Powell called balls and strikes for the San Francisco Giants-Washington Nationals game April 17th and withstood a pair of challenges from Giants catcher Daniel Susac with a pair of ball calls upheld quickly by the ABS system. By the third inning, the Giants were out of challenges, while the Nationals successfully appealed a pair of calls during San Francisco's 10-5 victory. To be sure, this was a solid standoff early in this ABS era. Entering the game, players were successful on 54% of their challenges to umpires, and the typical game averaged 4.05 challenges. Powell saw exactly 4 challenges and won 2 of them. Of course, ABS is relatively old news for those umpiring in Class AAA in recent years, where ABS was first deployed on a trial basis. Powell is technically still in the Class AAA ranks. She is on the MLB's list of call-up umpires who are based in Class AAA, yet work with MLB games as fill-ins in the event of injuries, illness, vacations, or other forms of absence by the 76 full-time umps. And her strong performance was no surprise to Susac, who caught several games at Class AAA that Powell umped. As Susac assumes more of the Giants' catching duties as incumbent Patrick Bailey struggles at the plate, April 17th was a big game for both of them. In my opinion, she keeps getting better and better, Susac tells USA Today Sports, and I thought she did a really good job. She's always great to have back there. We always have a good conversation, especially at the start of games, and I thought she did a great job tonight. Powell debuted as an MLB fill-in in 2025, and on August 10th became the first woman to call balls and strikes for a major league game. She called 6 games behind the plate last season and, according to the umpire tracking website Umpire Scorecards, maintained a 92.9% accuracy rate. Susac tried and failed twice in the early innings, challenging a full count ball call to Luis Garcia Jr. He was off by an inch, and the Giants were out of challenges by the third inning. The second one, I probably had a little more emotion to it. Probably knew it was a ball, but wanted to get one there, he says. Nationals' third baseman, Brady House, successfully challenged a strike call in the bottom of the 8th, while a strike call in the top of the 9th was successfully overturned to a ball. In the meantime, Powell punched out Nationals slugger James Woods twice on called third strikes and did the same to Giants first baseman Rafael Devers in the 7th. Both retreated to the dugout rapidly. While the more in-depth scorecards of Powell's first big league foray behind the plate in 2026 will have to wait, she withstood the rigors of ABS just fine. 2 wins, 2 losses, a little better than average. And another step toward making the notion of a woman calling balls and strikes in a big league game a little more unremarkable. It's a good way that she blends in, says Susac. She's done a great job, and she keeps getting better, which is awesome to see. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Insane $3.9 billion sale of Padres may save the MLB. You want a little optimism? Dreaming of actual labor peace in Major League Baseball? Well, you can send thank you cards and flowers to 100 Park Boulevard, San Diego, California, 92101. This will be the new headquarters of Jose E. Feliciano and wife Kwanzaa Jones, who are about to become the new owners of the San Diego Padres. And they may have also saved baseball from self-destruction this winter. Feliciano, a co-founder and managing partner of Clear Lake Capital, a private equity firm based in Santa Monica, California, won the high-stakes bidding war for the Padres for a cool $3.9 billion. It shattered the MLB record purchase price for a franchise, 62% more than the New York Mets' $2.4 billion sale in 2020, and the 6th largest in North American sports. The deal sent shockwaves through baseball. That's insane, one executive said. I'm floored, said one owner. Most people in financial circles felt the value was worth $2.5 billion. Another owner said, at the most. When you consider the franchise was considered to be worth $1.9 billion in 2025 by Forbes, and that Oshai Ohtani didn't suddenly put on a Padres uniform, the real stars of their record sale may have been the Padres' investment bankers. Whether it is stupid money or it turns out to be a shrewd investment, only time will tell. In the meantime, that $3.9 billion just put a sledgehammer to the argument the game isn't prospering and needs an overhaul in the next collective bargaining agreement. "I'm just glad," one executive said, "that I don't have to be the guy to explain to the Players Association why this sale won't matter in negotiations." Will the sale diminish MLB's argument for a salary cap? "How can it not?" one owner said. "This isn't the Yankees, Dodgers, or Mets being sold. This is the Padres, who reside in the 30th largest market in the USA. While the Dodgers had TV revenue averaging $334 million, the Padres, who lost their TV contract 3 years ago, are earning about $30 million. Yet 14 years after Peter Seidler and Ron Fowler purchased the Padres for $800 million, that investment soared by a whopping 38.7.5%. I think it goes to show what cities are capable of, starter Joe Musgrove, a lifelong San Diego resident, told the San Diego Union Tribune. "I think people like to lean on the stereotypes of we're a small-town market, so we're going to stay in our pocket, and it's kind of a fallback. But Peter started something that seems to have carried on far beyond him and is going to keep going." Seidler, with the help of Fowler until 2020 when Seidler took over as chairman, turned a sleepy franchise into a behemoth. He poured money into the team, with a payroll topping $200 million since 2022 and ranking third behind only the Mets and Yankees in 2023. In turn, the Padres have enjoyed their greatest run of success in franchise history, reaching the postseason 4 times in the last 6 years. The Padres have set franchise attendance records the last 3 years, ranking second behind the Dodgers this year, averaging 42,395 fans a game. They sold out 72 of their 81 home games last year, drawing 3.4 million fans, more than any team but the Dodgers. You look at what's going on in our city, and it's not just in our city but across the state of baseball, and this game is in an amazing place. Padres infielder Jake Cronenworth, an influential member of the union's executive subcommittee, told reporters on April 17. "And for the market that we're in, and for what the team just sold for, I think shows where the game is. You see, there are owners that want to win and want to put a great product on the field because they see the benefits of it. I think today is a perfect example of what the benefit is." Commissioner Rob Manfred has spoken to owners about centralizing media rights, projecting that it would provide $250 million per team beginning in 2029. They would also expect to generate considerably more money in gambling revenue. And when MLB expands, most likely in 2031, that will provide at least $4.4 billion in expansion fees, worth $146.6 million per team. Little wonder why the Pohlad family in Minnesota, the Lerners in Washington, D.C., and Artie Moreno in Anaheim, California, went to bed over the weekend with dollar signs dancing in their heads. The 3 franchises went up for sale the last 2 years, and all were pulled back when they didn't receive the offers they anticipated. Now with the Padres sale, those price tags will soar. It's a shame Seidler, who died in 2023, is not alive to see it. He never would have sold the Padres. Seidler insisted for years that baseball was in a healthy place, and even though the Padres went for $300 million in debt and needed to take out a $50 million loan in 2023, their franchise quietly soared in value. Seidler was so bullish on the industry that he was opposed to the short-term CBA. "Why have a 5-year deal?" he told USA Today Sports in an interview in his office in 2021. "Let's make it 10 years. Why do this all over again so soon?" If Seidler were alive, he might be pushing for a 20-year deal, but even from the heavens he must be smiling, knowing that the passion and energy that he poured into the team is being rewarded. He also can take pride in knowing that Feliciano and Jones will also be making baseball history as minority owners. Feliciano would become the first Puerto Rican-born owner of an MLB team. His wife, Jones, a professional singer and music producer who also has a law degree, would become the first African American to be a majority owner of an MLB team. The couple, graduates from Princeton, are expected to officially be announced this week as the incoming owners and should be approved by MLB owners before the All-Star break. They just may be the perfect power couple to be handed the torch from the Seidler family, carrying out Seidler's dream of winning the Padres' first World Series championship. At the end of the year, if an agreement can be reached by the MLB and the players by December 1st, with that impending lockout never coming to pass, well, you can thank San Diego's newest residents. Their historic purchase might have dramatically altered the entire CBA landscape. Movies. Winkler's new Normal has a place for the past by Brian Truitt. His buddy Bob Odenkirk became an action movie guy later in life, so why not Henry Winkler? Listen, I'm looking forward to being in the superhero sphere. Maybe I was a superhero and now I jump but I can't fly, Winkler says, wryly referencing his infamous jumping the shark Happy Days moment. Arthur Fonzarelli naturally comes up in conversation when chatting with Winkler, but even the Fonz might give some side-eye and a whoa to the 80-year-old Emmy winner's latest character. In director Ben Wheatley's action thriller Normal, in theaters now, Ulysses Odenkirk is a temporary sheriff in a small Minnesota town of Normal who discovers the place's darkest secret. It's the home of riches owned by Japanese Yakuza gangsters. Winkler plays the town's mayor, an excessively charming, morally questionable fellow who scrambles the town's cops and residents to keep Ulysses from fouling everything up. I always think you scratch the front door of any door in America and there's chaos just behind it, says Winkler, who was called up by Odenkirk himself to co-star in Normal, which filmed in chilly Winnipeg. There is a woman who sells knitting supplies, the soda shop, hardware store, post office, and then you do a little lurking just beneath is this monster waiting to push through the surface. I hear Winnipeg can be very cold. My body actually said to me on the night of the blizzard, you know what? I'm going to go home now. If you want to stay, be my guest. My mouth stopped working. The wind is coming at you from every corner of the compass, and it goes right through your bones. How many layers were you rocking on a daily basis? I would say 5. I don't have a lot of requests as an actor. One of them is I do not like to be cold. So I had long underwear, and then I had long underwear, and then I had gloves, and then I had gloves, and then I had a jacket, which we had to replace because it did not do the job. Hazardous History is back. Is there anything you've learned from the show that just completely fascinated you? What got me was the facts, what people do in order to make money or think they're creating entertainment, and it turns out to be hazardous. Babies had a hard time sleeping. They get colicky, and then you kept up all night. So this lovely lady makes a potion in this beautifully shaped bottle. Give a teaspoon to the baby at night and they'll sleep through the night. It's a miracle. And then, of course, they're addicted to morphine. You are a nostalgia fix for so many people who loved and grew up with the Fonz, but are you yourself a nostalgic guy? I am. There was a game, Winky Dinky and You, when I was growing up. There was like a cellophane sheet that you could put on the television, and then the crayons came with it. While they were doing the show, they would put dots on the screen, and you connected the dots on this washable cellophane screen. Years of collecting crap. And I found this box, and it took me back to a little television dinner table, having a tuna fish salad sandwich on Wonder Bread connecting the dots. Do you keep a lot of your own memorabilia? I do. I have, I think, almost every Fonz action figure and the Funkos now of the different Happy Days characters. I have the lunchbox that is now in the Smithsonian with a leather jacket. The Fonz, he changed my life. He was fun to play. What's your favorite thing in the collection? There's a piece of plywood that was just a shelf just outside the swinging doors of Arnold's. And you would put your coffee cup or your water bottle on it before you walked in. I would write notes on it for years, like, today Ron Howard has a red-headed girl named Bryce. And then I would write down, today we had a redheaded girl named Zoe, born months from each other, March to September, and they are friends today. Today starts the 8th year of Happy Days. Oh, I finally got Scott Baio with a spitball, and so I have that piece of plywood. You said Barry was a similar redefining career moment. Is the mayor part of this new phase of characters you want to play? I don't have a vision of a character I want to play, except that one day I would like to play a character who has to communicate with everything except his voice. But I'm loving my current roles. I did a scene in a movie about rappers with Owen Wilson. I played his boss. I just did a scene last week with Mary Steenburgen. That was like walking on clouds. I've never really worked with her before. We've known each other for 40 or 50 years. It was like magic. So I really don't think about, what is it I want to do? I think about, I get to do this. You say your next project is your favorite one. What is next for you? I always wanted to be on Curb Your Enthusiasm. I was never tapped. And I have to say, I was sad. Larry David has this new show, the 250th, a sketch comedy about the history of America. I got to play John Hancock in the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and it was one of the great moments of my life. I was 8 years old, lying in my bed in Manhattan, dreaming about being an actor, and I'm not even sure why I'm sitting here with you. I'm 80. I'm still at the table. And I'm telling you, I define gratitude. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Streaming. New serving of beef is as juicy as the first, by Kelly Lawler. Netflix has another helping of beef on the menu, and dang, it tastes so good. The deliciously uncomfortable series about a feud between strangers was a breakout hit in 2023 when it premiered, starring Ali Wong and Steve Yeun. It won Emmys and acclaim and put common road rage incidents into stark perspective, and now creator Lee Sung-jin is serving us more. Season 2 of Beef is streaming now. It takes on a whole new conflict with a whole new cast, but is every bit the excruciating masterpiece the first season was. Everything you hoped would come back to this series does. Squirm-worthy and awkward interactions, deep commentary on class and status, plot twists that are outlandish but oh so satisfying. Culinary adjacent title or not, you'll want to gobble up all 8 episodes of the new season, starring Oscar Isaac, Carey Mulligan, Kaylee Spaney of Priscilla, and Charles Melton, May-December. Instead of 2 strangers with beef this time, it's 2 couples in conflict, with Isaac and Mulligan as the happily married Josh and Lindsay, and Spaney and Melton as the bright-eyed young lovers, Ashley and Austin. After the younger pair witness a semi-violent altercation between the older 2, the couples become intertwined in an ever-worsening web of blackmail, resentment, embezzlement, fraud, and deception. This one regrettable fight between husband and wife has far-reaching implications for the community surrounding a ritzy LA country club where Josh is the general manager and Ashley and Austin are his underlings. The couple's antagonistic relationship with each other is further complicated by the arrival of Chairwoman Park, Young-Ju Si, Minari, and the first Korean actress to win an Oscar. The club's new billionaire owner from South Korea and her alluring assistant, Eunice, Se-young Jang, the newcomers threaten everyone's livelihoods and perhaps even their romantic relationships. Lee has put together a sublime cast for his complex and deep characters whose inner lives are as juicy and gripping as the drama they cause. Isaac, easily one of the most magnetic actors of his generation, has been transformed into a sleazy, lurid middle manager with a penchant for manosphere podcasts and a deep inferiority complex. It turns out the Star Wars star can play revolting just as easily as heroic. His greasy, slicked-back haircut helps. Mulligan, who similarly usually gives off a warm presence on screen, is icy and sharp here. Her Lindsay stuck up and miserable in the life she's made for herself, but completely trapped by her ego and selfishness. Spaney and Melton, who are both speedy up-and-comers in Hollywood, are endearing and talented. Their performances here provide ample evidence for their meteoric rise. Ashley and Austin are sweet and dangerous. Naive, navigating a world they resent for its inequities and broken systems and are too experienced to try and game them. The show is propulsive hurricane of misery and cringe, from the violent incident that sets off this series of unfortunate events to the twists and horrors that unfold. I'm loath to explain too much of the plot because it turns in so many directions, and unwrapping each episode like a Christmas present is one of the joys of watching the series, even as it ratchets up the tension and anxiety. Its themes are layered and thought-provoking, and as in the first Beef, the show is preoccupied with the idea of the haves and the have-nots. From the perspective of Ashley and Austin, all the way at the bottom of the food chain, it's cash-strapped and indebted Josh and Lindsay, who are the elites, even as the pair resent the rich bigwigs at the club they are forced to serve. Looming over them all is Park and her plastic surgeon husband, Song Kang-ho, of the similarly themed Oscar-winning film Parasite, with their billions of dollars, yet steep problems of their own. They're all playing the game of survival in late-stage capitalism, but no one gets to go past go and collect $200. The desperation that all the characters feel as they strive for what they want and need, be it money or power or respect or a promotion or their own business or even just health insurance, is universally relatable. Lee takes his characters to their extremes, but they never stop being unmistakably human. At the end of the day, we all have beef with someone or something. Watching this show might just be an alternative to screaming into the void. Streaming. Cohen Pike face a woman's world in Ladies by Brian Truitt. In the alternate reality of the new Netflix comedy Ladies First, women rule the world, and Sacha Baron Cohen has got to deal with it. Directed by Thea Sharrock, Me Before You, the film, streaming May 22nd, stars Cohen and Rosamund Pike and flips gender power dynamics in a playful and satirical way. USA Today has the exclusive first trailer for the movie, which also stars Richard E. Grant and Emily Mortimer. Damian Sachs, Cohen, is a successful and chauvinistic advertising CEO who lives for power and casual flings, but treats female co-workers as inferiors. However, a bonk on the head when he accidentally runs into a street sign pole changes everything, and he wakes up in a parallel universe dominated by females. Not only does he have to tussle with no-nonsense boss Alex Fox, Pike, but he needs to figure out a way to exist in an unfamiliar place where a woman is pope and men's lingerie is a thing. Damien begins as the sort of man who would make a 1950s golf club look progressive, and then suddenly finds himself in a parallel world where women behave exactly as men do in our world, Cohen tells USA Today via email. In this flipped world, men are judged on their appearance, and so, despite my reluctance, I transformed my Borat body into something less repulsive. Pike found the script, based on the 2018 Netflix film Je ne sais pas un homme facile, I Am Not an Easy Man, to be extremely funny, very original, provocative, cool, and unexpected, the Oscar nominee says. I love to laugh, so it was an amazing chance to show a different side of myself and even play two drastically different characters within the same movie. The actress also appreciated the very British humor in her character's wardrobe. I really wanted to feel like she was effortlessly in control, Pike says by email. I think about any culture where there is a matriarchy, the women occupy space with confidence and ease, and I thought, that's what I really want. So costume designer Lauren Rahani crafted suits for Pike that have very powerful, wide, broad shoulders. They're in colors that are intimidatingly confident and bright. She puts things together in an original way that's definitely a playful look at men's tailoring, but it's done with a twist. And physically, Pike enjoyed taking on more masculine poses and owned the man spread. Sharrock wants audiences to watch Cohen and Pike in the movie and come out feeling entertained, have a good laugh, and really enjoy themselves, she says. And if Ladies First creates some room to reflect through humor and encourages a conversation about our own role in society, then we've done what we set out to do. It's your birthday. Who's celebrating today? Actor and author George Takei turns 89. Musician Doyle Lawson and Quicksilver, 82. Actor Veronica Cartwright, 77. Actor Jessica Lange, 77. Actor Clint Howard, 67. Actor Crispin Glover, 62. Actor Andy Serkis, 62. Singer Wade Hayes, 57. Actor host Shamar Moore, 56. Actor model Carmen Electra, 54. Musician Stephen Marley, 54. Rapper Killer Mike, Run the Jewels, 51. Actor Joey Lawrence, 50. And actor Clayne Crawford, 48. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today, Monday, April 20th, 2026. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Jean. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 1 of We Did Okay Kid by Sir Anthony Hopkins. Following that at 3 o'clock is Smithsonian Magazine, and at 4 o'clock a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We broadcast daily readings of printed matter to those who are blind or have a print disability throughout Buffalo, Western New York, and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. Almost 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNET. Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service broadcast studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. Please let others know about your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a serialized reading of the book We Did Okay Kid by Anthony Hopkins. The book was published in 2025 by Summit Books and is 318 pages long. Today's episode number 1 begins on page Roman numeral 9. Your reader is Mary Beth. This is going to be a
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print